It's the 9th of September, 1981, deep inside a commentary box at the Outlived Stadium in Oslo, and a Norwegian broadcaster named Bjørge Lillelien is about 30 seconds away from losing his mind. The final whistle is coming. Norway are beating England. And the 40 seconds of radio he's about to deliver will outlive every single player on that pitch. You've probably heard the clips. Most football fans have. But the truth behind that night has nothing to do with the scoreline. Because what Lillelien screamed into his microphone was never really about one football match. It was an announcement. A country of 4 million people, frozen half the year and ignored by the game's aristocracy, was putting the inventors of football on notice, and it would spend the next 45 years making good on the threat, one impossible night at a time. This Saturday in Miami in a World Cup quarterfinal, the bill comes due again. To understand what England are walking into, you need to understand what actually happened in Oslo. Both times. Start with what England brought in 1981's royalty. Kevin Keegan, twice European Footballer of the Year, wearing the captain's armband. Ray Clements in goal. A young Brian Robson running Ron Greenwood's midfield, weeks away from a British record transfer to Manchester United. 4 of the starting 11 had lifted the European Cup with Liverpool just 4 months earlier. And here's the detail that changes everything: Norwegians worship these men. English League football aired on Norwegian television every week, and it was one of the biggest shows in the country. Norwegian kids grew up arguing about Liverpool and United the way English kids did. So the men in white shirts weren't just opponents. They were the posters on the bedroom wall. Have you ever had to tackle your own hero? Now look at Norway's dressing room. The goalkeeper Tor Antonsen worked as an electrician. The right back Bjarne Berntsen taught at a primary school. Roughly half the squad were amateurs, and the captain Halvor Thorsen was the glamorous exception, a genuine professional, playing his club football in the Netherlands. Norway hadn't reached a World Cup since 1938. They sat at the bottom of the qualifying group. They had faced England 5 times before and never won once. Nobody in Oslo that night seriously expected the 6th attempt to be any different. For 15 minutes it wasn't. Paul Mariner crossed, Keegan flicked the ball on, and Robson surged through to score his first ever goal for England. Order restored. The Ullevål crowd went quiet. The Stars would win, the Electrician would go back to his day job, and the world would keep spinning the right way up. Then in the 35th minute, Tom Lund swung in a cross from the right that somehow drifted all the way past Clements. Roger Albertson was credited with the touch that turned it in. Years later, he admitted he never touched the ball at all. Think about that. The most famous equalizer in Norwegian history was scored by nobody. 6 minutes after that, Terry McDermott miskicked a clearance straight into the path of Thorsen, who turned and buried it. 2-1. Before halftime. What do you do when the script simply stops obeying you? England did what favorites always do. They pushed, they crossed, they attacked for 45 minutes and nothing came. And when the final whistle blew, Lillelien detonated. He didn't describe the result. He ran through a roll call of British greatness: Lord Nelson, Winston Churchill, Anthony Eden, Clement Attlee, the boxer Henry Cooper, even Lady Diana. And then he called out the Prime Minister herself, asked if she could hear him, and informed her in English that your boys took one hell of a beating. Why recite dead statesmen after a football match? Because beating England was never just about football. Small footballing nations measure themselves against England for a reason. England is the standard, the country that invented the game, wrote its laws, and exported it to the world. Beat the standard and suddenly you exist. In 2002, a British newspaper voted that outburst the greatest moment in the history of sports commentary. Lillelien understood exactly what he was doing. Here's the twist England missed. They still qualified for the 1982 World Cup, rescued by results elsewhere in the group, so English football filed Oslo away as a freak. A banana skin. One embarrassing night in Scandinavia. That was the mistake of a generation. Because Oslo wasn't an accident. It was a prototype. Enter the strangest revolutionary in football history. Egil Olsen. A former winger turned university lecturer. a chess obsessive who wandered around in Wellington boots and filled notebooks with match data decades before anyone said the word analytics. Olsen studied thousands of goals and reached a conclusion that offended almost everyone. Possession is overrated. Most goals, his numbers said, arrive within seconds of winning the ball by moving it forward fast into the space behind defenders before they can organize. In England, critics sneered at this as long ball football, just hoofing it forward and hoping. Olsen saw it differently. Why take 20 passes to reach halfway when one pass gets you there before the defense is even set? So when he took charge of Norway, he built the entire national team around that idea. Long, early passes instead of patient build-up. A defense organized by zones, each player guarding an area of the pitch rather than chasing one opponent around it. And one signature weapon, a huge diagonal launched toward the far post for Jostein Flo, a winger built like a lighthouse, to head back down into the box. Norwegians simply called it the flow pass. Pundits called it ugly. Olsen called it efficient. Which one wins football matches? June 2, 1993. Outlived again. A World Cup place on the line again. And this time England were so haunted by Norway that manager Graham Taylor redesigned his entire defense for a single opponent, dragging Gary Pallister, Manchester United's towering centre-half, out to right back purely to deal with Flo in the air. The plan worked. Flo won almost nothing. And it made no difference whatsoever. What more could a manager have done? Norway forced 9 corners in the first half, England forced none. Paul Gascoigne handed a free roll, was swallowed by 2 and 3 white shirts every time the ball reached him. Øyvind Leonhardsen swept Norway ahead just before the break, and 3 minutes into the second half Erik Mikkelen's long pass released Leonhardsen again, who slid in Lars Bohinen to finish from a narrow angle. 2-0. No comeback ever threatened. And this time there was no rescue. Norway didn't just beat England, they finished above them, top of the entire group, while England came third and missed the World Cup for the first time since 1978. Taylor was gone within months, his agony captured by a fly-on-the-wall documentary that reduced a national crisis to one immortal catchphrase: "Do I not like that?" Norway, meanwhile, went to America as group winners, and by 1995 FIFA ranked them the second-best team on the planet. Second. Behind only Brazil. A country with fewer people than Yorkshire, playing football its critics refused to even call football. The tournament itself delivered the cruelest twist imaginable. Norway's group in 1994 finished with all 4 teams level on 4 points, and Norway went out despite conceding just 1 goal in 3 matches, eliminated because they had scored only 1 themselves. Italy, the team that edged them, went all the way to the final. 4 years later in France, Norway produced the night that still defines them for millions, coming from behind late to beat Brazil in Marseille. That story is remarkable enough to deserve its own telling. Then Italy knocked them out in the round of 16, exactly as Italy had knocked them out in 1938. And after that came silence. No World Cup for 28 years. The rant slowly turned into a national relic, literally, because in 2011 Lillelien's commentary was nominated for UNESCO Memory of the World Register, filed alongside a manuscript by Ibsen and the music of Edvard Grieg. What kind of country archives a football taunt next to its greatest art? A country that always knew it was never just a taunt. Because here is the pattern hiding underneath everything. Norway never beat England by playing England's football better than England. They won by refusing the premise entirely. In 1981, it was amateurs with a set-piece plan against superstars with a reputation. In 1993, it was a chess lecturer with a notebook against a federation still arguing about style. England kept preparing for the football they respected. Norway kept bringing the football that works. And yes, England have beaten Norway plenty of times across the decades, comfortably, at Wembley, on routine nights nobody remembers. That's precisely the point. The only nights anyone remembers are the nights Norway won. Which brings you to last night. East Rutherford, New Jersey, in front of more than 80,000 people. Brazil, 5-time world champions who had somehow never beaten Norway in 4 previous meetings, against a Norwegian side back at the World Cup for the first time since 1998. Erling Haaland had already scored twice against Iraq, twice against Senegal, and the winner against Ivory Coast. Against Brazil, he was nearly invisible, managing roughly 30 touches all night. Then Orjan Nyland saved a first-half penalty from Bruno Guimaraes. Then, in the 79th minute, Haaland rose above Gabriel, a defender he has wrestled with in the Premier League for years, and headed Norway in front. In the 90th, he collected the ball at the edge of the box and drove it low into the corner. Neymar's stoppage-time penalty, quite possibly the final World Cup act of his life, changed nothing. Brazil suffered their earliest exit since 1990. Norway walked into the first quarterfinal in their history. And every thread ties together. The coach, Ståle Solbakken, was part of that 1998 squad in Marseille. The captain, Martin Odegaard, runs Arsenal's midfield every week. And Haaland, 7 goals in this tournament, level with Lionel Messi and Kylian Mbappé, was born in Leeds, in England in the year 2000, 2 years after Norway last kicked a ball at a World Cup. The striker who just ended Brazil was born on English soil. Now England stand in the way. Saturday night Miami, a semifinal at stake. England fought past Mexico 3-2 to get here, and they will start as favorites. Exactly as they were favorites in 1981, exactly as they were favorites in 1993. Norway have waited 45 years for a knockout match against the country that taught them the game, and then refused to take them seriously. Do you really believe they see this as just another quarterfinal? It's the 11th of July, 2026, high inside a commentary box in Miami, and somewhere a Norwegian broadcaster is sitting with a microphone, 30 seconds away from finding out whether it's time to lose their mind all over again. If that whistle blows the way Oslo's did, you won't need a translation. This time, you'll already know exactly what one hell of a beating means.